K.W. Jeter's Dr. Adder, the Glass Hammer, and Death Arms aren't a trilogy in the traditional sense. There's no single plot line connecting them, no recurring characters, and no overarching storyline. But they are thematically linked, forming a triptych of lost men, ruined cities, and shattered illusions. Let's crack it open. Each book follows a protagonist, Limit, Skylar, Ledger, who abandons a carefully controlled artificial existence and plunges headfirst into the chaos of the city. And they believe they're escaping. Ha! But in reality, they're just swapping one system of control for another. Their search for meaning ends not with enlightenment, but with disillusionment. And that, my friends, is why these books hit like a sledgehammer to the soul. Let's start with a concise summary of each novel in this trilogy. Dr. Adder came out in 1984, though it was written about a decade earlier. Set in a dystopian Los Angeles, Dr. Adder follows E. Allen Limit, an egg farmer with a dark family history who travels to the city to deliver a mysterious briefcase. There he encounters the infamous Dr. Adder, a surgeon specializing in grotesque body modifications for the city's sex workers. Sounds like something out of a Cronenberg movie, right? Limit gets caught in a brutal power struggle between Adder and John Mox, a televangelist leading a puritanical army known as the Moral Force. As violence erupts between these factions, Limit is forced to confront the brutal reality of the world and his role in it. The novel is an unflinching look at technology, body modification, and the commodification of desire, blending cyberpunk aesthetics with grim satire. The Glass Hammer came out a year later in 1985. Skylar, a courier or sprinter known for outrunning government particle beam satellites, smuggles computer chips across a dystopian America. His ability to survive the deadly runs makes him a sort of underground celebrity, and soon he becomes the center of a new religious movement and reality TV sensation. As corporations and media exploit his story, Skylar realizes he is no longer in control of his own narrative. The novel plays with themes of media manipulation, corporate control, and the blurred line between reality and perception. With elements of conspiracy and a fragmented screenplay-like storytelling style, The Glass Hammer explores how personal rebellion can be co-opted by the very forces it seeks to escape. 2 years later, Death Arms came out in 1887. Artie Legger returns to a near-future Los Angeles ravaged by the fear, a mass hysteria event that left only outcasts and mutants behind. Hunted by the corporate police force, Scrap, Legger is drawn into a conspiracy tied to his deceased father, an assassin with psionic abilities. As he navigates this wasteland, he meets a strange group of survivors. Are there any other kind? Including a woman who can reanimate the dead. The novel is an exploration of paranoia, legacy, and transformation. Legger's journey is not just about uncovering the past, but becoming something entirely new. Death Arms leans further into horror elements, presenting a world where reality itself is unstable and identity is fluid. Now, Jeter's own life experiences provide the foundation for these novels. He grew up in Orange County, California, a place he viewed as safe, comfortable, and completely devoid of anything real. The suburbs were to him a landscape of artificiality, prefab homes, strip malls, and an existence dictated by consumption rather than creation. As a young man, he left. But when he returned years later, something clicked. He saw how much the suburbs had shaped him, how their psychological control was just as powerful as any dystopian regime. And that's where the foundation of his fiction lies. The uneasy relationship between the city and the suburb, the tension between illusion and reality. Jeter's protagonists follow the same arc, starting in a false world, seeking something more, and ultimately discovering that the real world is just another layer of deception. Jeter wasn't just writing personal fiction, he was making a pointed critique of modern civilization. His argument: the city and the suburbs aren't separate worlds. They exist in a parasitic relationship. The city produces, it's where the economic engine churns, where people hustle, create, and sell. It's brutal, chaotic, and transactional. The suburbs consume. They exist for comfort and stability, but everything they consume is produced in the city. Their entire purpose is to funnel money back into the system. And here's the kicker. The same corporations that control the city also dictate suburban life. The workers spend their days fueling the capitalist machine only to take their wages back home and spend them at corporate owned shopping malls. Or, these days, online. Even their entertainment, their aspirations, their very sense of identity, curated, sold, and packaged by the same forces they work for. And what about the people who reject the suburbs? The ones who leave behind that safe life to pursue something more authentic in the city. Jeter has an answer for them too. In Jeter's world, rejecting the suburbs isn't an act of self discovery, it's an act of self destruction. His protagonists are drawn to the city because they believe it holds the truth. What they find instead is exploitation, violence, and the realization that no place is truly free. Jeter likens this rebellion to a bad attitude, a refusal to play the game. But here's the irony: the people who reject the suburbs often end up worse off. In Dr. Adder, the rebels of Los Angeles become the mutilated, exploited figures of Interface Boulevard. In The Glass Hammer, Skylar's supposed freedom turns into a media circus co-opted by corporate forces. In Death Arms, Legger learns that even resistance is part of the system's design. The ultimate truth in Jeter's work: escape isn't possible. There's no utopia waiting on the other side. The city isn't freedom, it's just a different kind of control. Each of the three books follows the same narrative arc, more or less, but with different outcomes. The protagonist starts in a structured, artificial environment, whether it's a literal suburb or corporate controlled society or just a state of ignorance. They believe they need to escape. So they head to the city expecting answers. Instead, they find a world that is harsh, cruel, and more transactional than they ever imagined. Knowledge changes them. Violence, betrayal, power struggles reshape who they are. They realize the truth, but it's not what they expected. And once they know it, they can never go back. The difference between the books lies in how the protagonist responds to this final revelation. In Dr. Adder, Limit survives, but he's permanently scarred, carrying the weight of everything he's seen. In The Glass Hammer, Skylar's journey is exposed as nothing more than another production to be consumed. In Death Arms, Legger doesn't just learn the truth, he becomes it, absorbing his father's power and stepping fully into his legacy. Each book presents a different version of the same existential crisis. If everything is a lie, what does it mean to be real? Throughout their journeys, each protagonist encounters two key figures. The hip guide, this is the insider who introduces them to the city's hidden truths. In each book, there is a version of this mentor, Droid, Dortz, Wire, who serves as a gateway into the underworld. But they're not heroes. Their knowledge is just another form of survival, another transaction. And then there is the woman who sees. This character is the key to revelation. She forces the protagonist to confront what they don't want to see about themselves, about the world. In Death Arms, Rachel literally reanimates dead flesh, making the hidden forces of the city visible. These characters don't offer salvation, they offer truth. And in Jeter's world, truth is more destructive than ignorance. In the afterworld to Death Arms, the third book in the series, Jeter lays it all out. His novels aren't just about dystopian futures or cyberpunk aesthetics. They're about the way reality itself has been co-opted and sold back to us. Nostalgia, authenticity, rebellion, none of it is real. It's all been packaged and marketed, turned into another product to consume. Jeter's cynicism is razor sharp, but he also acknowledges something else. His protagonists may be doomed, but they choose to fight. Even knowing the system is inescapable, they push back. Not because they think they'll win, but because they refuse to lie to themselves. And maybe in the end, that's the closest thing to freedom Jeter is willing to give them. Jeter's books are brutal, challenging, and often deeply unsettling. They don't offer easy answers, and they sure as hell don't leave you feeling warm and fuzzy. But they do ask the right questions about control, about rebellion, about the price of knowledge. So what do you do with that knowledge? That's up to you. But if you're looking for a neat, happy ending, well, you've come to the wrong place yet again, right? Jeter ends the afterword with a deceptively simple phrase: everything's possible now. That's not optimism speaking. That's a warning, a cosmic shrug. A middle finger wrapped in a fortune cookie. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. And if there's no going back, well, what's left? That's a question a lot of us are probably asking right now, staring down an era that looks more like a mashup of 1984 and Idiocracy than we're comfortable admitting. Maybe that's why we read science fiction, to make sense of the madness, or at least find a version of the future where we get to have a little fun before everything collapses. As for Jeter's writing style, I would say it's fairly workmanlike. I wouldn't say he was a great prose stylist, but he's not bad. I would say he's a bit of a journeyman, especially in these early novels of his. He's kind of, in a way, thematically or stylistically, bridge between the new wave and cyberpunk, especially since the first novel, Dr. Adder, was really written at the height of the new wave. As for its connectivity to cyberpunk, I think it's a bit of an outlier, but definitely worth exploring. Have you read these Jeter novels? Have you read other Jeter novels? He's done a number of tie-ins for Blade Runner, Star Wars, and Star Trek Deep Space Nine. He's also written horror novels, and I think he's written some steampunk novels. I think he might have coined the term steampunk, if I remember correctly. Anyway, leave a comment. I'd love to chat about it. So next up on Speculative Reader, I'm looking to review Anna Kavan's Ice. I've been meaning to read it for a while. You can expect to see a video in a week or so. In the meantime, I'm considering a longer, bigger video that's in the style of the beginner's guide to J.G. Ballard that I did a while back, maybe this time on Philip K. Dick. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm going to post a poll and you can vote on who you would want to see in that video. In the meantime, be sure to check out my Soundtrack Collector channel, where I recently posted the 4th episode of the Sci-Fi Soundtracks series, this one covering the 1990s, so that's everything from Total Recall and Terminator 2 to Starship Troopers and Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. Be sure to check it out. I'd love to have more viewers over there. Until next time, stay speculative and keep reading.